I'm gonna keep this real short. This was shared by our friend Max at Crow House. And this is a tiny nano microscopic entity. And apparently these are dwelling in the facial diapers that most think they are required to wear. Apparently these moving creations can also be found in the swabs, and really making me question all paper products at this point. Max said he's ordered a digital microscope, and I would encourage anyone else that has one to examine these common products that are taken for granted. Welcome. And what really matters to everybody, that'll be something different. I'm always looking for a good life and a better life. When I realize all the history and knowledge that's been buried, I'm excited to discover it, and even more excited to implement it in my own life. And I don't need anything grand. When it comes to free energy, I don't need some domes and towers. I'm perfectly content with solar. I'm amazed they've given us that. And in conjunction with wind power and even a little hydroelectric if you have running water, just perfect, ample energy to sustain oneself and family. And for me, a big step forward would be an electric car, something I could charge with my alternative system, and something that I could charge while on the go. I don't understand why modern electric cars aren't covered with a solar charging surface and many other means that could be used to capture energy on the fly. Another one that I would like is a flying apparatus. I don't care if it's a zeppelin or some sort of vessel that is able to move freely, similar to the drone we're all familiar with today. And I'm going to show you a really cool flying bucket of the past coming up. But first I wanted to just look at Jay Leno's electric car. I don't know why, I think the algorithm is suggesting these to me. I've watched quite a few Jay Leno vehicle videos, and he has a lot of vehicles. Really fascinating ones. Old world tech. And I won't play it, just in case it's not permitted. But I did want to show it to you. This thing is an electric buggy that would have been operating side by side the horse and buggy. And it operated on batteries, and this here is the charging station. And here is one of the batteries. And just amazing quality for this time period, not like the plastic junk they give us these days. And what I really liked is not only was this battery rechargeable and said to propel the vehicle for 100 miles on a charge, but this battery was meant to be serviced, and you could simply refill your acid alkaline solution and use this battery forever. And now all batteries are cheap and disposable. And here we have a patent number and manufacturer. Here's an advertisement for this vehicle on his wall. And I believe he said it went up to 40 miles per hour. And nowadays he's retrofitted the vehicle with modern deep cycle batteries. But essentially everything else is original. And these look like some Trojans and several types of deep cycle batteries. And he takes this baby out on the road with this guy. And here's a little look at the inside. It looks much more comfortable than the inside of any vehicle that I've driven. And no transmission needed, similar to modern electric cars. Very simple affair, and I'm not impressed with all the hype about the modern electric car, for there's nothing new and exciting about it. This is simply old technology that has been kept from us for over 100 years. And all of the old world was utilizing free energy technologies. And in our short inheritance, everything has been converted to a dirty petro application. Unsustainable and just plain stupid. And here, like I said, this car goes about 40 miles an hour and 100 miles on a charge. And I would love such a vehicle, and do plan on building one. I have an old Ford Ranger. I put 300,000 miles on it, and plan on putting an electric motor in it. And I think that brings us to a solution for those that are awake. And nobody's gonna give us a better world. It's us that has to recreate our world, beginning with our own lives, our own vehicles, our own homes, communities, means of survival. And it's all very simple. The biggest infection in our way of thinking is that somebody is going to do something for us. And if we expect people to do things for us, then we can also expect that it will not be done well, and we'll pay dearly for it. And perhaps only when people begin to take control of their lives will the rest of the sleeping population wake up and begin to follow suit. But we can't wait for that. So very fascinating. Love the Jay Leno electric car. And I'll leave the link to this video. He talks about the make and model and manufacture of this fine vehicle. And next I wanted to show you a little bit that I saw in a Paul Cook video. Excellent share, thank you Paul. And a showcase, about 30 minutes of all kinds of flying vehicles of the past. I'm not sure if this guy is wearing a mask or is an alien, but nevertheless, a flying craft. And this was not my favorite one. We'll get to that in a minute, but here is a more drone type of flying vehicle. Very simple. We should be able to buy one of these for $5,000 to $10,000 in a fair and just world, but that is not the case. And here's this apparatus I wanted to show you, again shared by Paul. And this is very simply some sort of bucket with a type of propelling engine as seen here. Now this would be very convenient for a commuter, maybe going to the store, getting groceries, or going to work. Probably not the thing you'd want to take across country, but who knows? Depending on how fast it moves, it may be a possibility. And this being the most crude version of some kind of flying apparatus. The same drive could be put into a more comfortable cabin, but what I like about it is it shows us how simple and uncomplicated something need really be. No wings, no wheels, and not a million buttons or lights. And this is from our past. And I don't think they want us flying around, checking out our realm, making new discoveries about where we really are. I think they like us shackled to the ground, paying overpriced costs of living, and even if some have vehicles, they just don't have the time or money to go exploring. Recently somebody sent me a fascinating share somewhere in my emails. Maybe I could pull up the map of no-fly zones. Of course we know about the no-fly zone in the Grand Canyon, hiding ruins, told of us in the early 1900s by explorer Thomas Kincaid. All kinds of Egyptian ruins, artifacts, gold, pyramids, cave entrances, and now this is a no-fly zone. And he was telling of another one off the coast of San Francisco. There's some islands out there, and we have a no-fly zone out there. So very interesting. Perhaps somebody has a boat and could go check it out. Just look for the no-fly zone off the coast. Not as easy as flying over it, And again, flight is kept restricted and very expensive. Typically, only people with some disposable income find themselves flying, a real luxury, and it really shouldn't be. And so, once I have secured an electric car, I'll be working on a flying vehicle. And frankly, I like the idea of a Zeppelin, and just putting some kind of gas, such as a hydrogen, in an aluminum vessel, a nice airship, seeming like a very comfortable ride. But something like this seems like a great deal of fun, and no reason why we can't replicate something like this. And here we can see a quick little clip of this vehicle hovering above the trees. Very fascinating, and who wouldn't want something like this? Something that has been kept from us, and we should work on getting back into our lives. And we may need to come together and change laws and allow for the use of such vehicles and average civilians flying them. This would fall under our constitutional right to travel, and who says how we should be able to travel? And I look forward to your thoughts on this subject. Do you know anyone today building such craft? And here I thought we would talk about something else. And maybe this technology went hand in hand with the lost past civilization, and we discussed in a past video who that past civilization may have been. Another race entirely that we may have worked side by side with. And I could imagine all the races and beings had a different specialty. Some being masters of metallurgy, some technology, others mining and building, some the keepers of wisdom. And now all these races told of in the past are gone. And I believe we have reverse engineered much of this, but it's not being utilized or distributed for the common good of the remaining people. And here Global Vision has proposed just this, that we lived side by side with these giants and even smaller races, perhaps aquatic and flying entities. Again, we only have traces of this in lore of past. But here he showed a nice depiction of these large doors with smaller doors built into them. And yes, they may have been retrofitted, but in many cases they seem to be part of the original door, simply being a clue and lending to the idea that two species may have coexisted side by side. And again, he makes another comparison with two types of stairs, and again we've proposed that they've been retrofitted, but in this case let's consider that they were built this way. Large steps obviously being inconvenient for small people, and small steps would be inconvenient for large people. And if we consider this in the original design of the building, then we can also have an idea of how things were in this timeline, and perhaps large and small coexisting peacefully. And it's a shame that this knowledge is kept from us, but it clearly opposes the narrative they are pushing. And I believe that this narrative is constantly threatened. For such a great being must still exist today, and whenever skeletons are found, they are ushered away and discarded and not displayed for the common people to see. And what cases have we had today, or at least in recent times, showing these possible previous inhabitants of this realm? We have many examples of photographs of giant people, especially in the earlier part of our history, but we have very little video footage. We have this one of this giant in Japan in 1890, and I have made a video on it, and it's one of the few videos on my channel that have been hit by this platform and deemed as inappropriate content for viewers. So we won't play that in this particular video, but I think it's absolutely fascinating. Perhaps one of the more controversial pieces of video I've shown, and we're often told that this was made for a children's movie, but in fact the footage was never used in the movie, only in the preview, and there is more footage that was not used in the preview, which lends to the authenticity of this footage. And this man seems to be of another race, not the same physical makeup as ourselves. Shorter arms, heavier neck, and I've watched this video hundreds of times, and I do believe it's authentic. And we don't get much after that. And here we can see a building, or the remains of one, from the old world. And some of the best examples we see are photos from the early 1900s, and this one being 1909. But in very recent times, we do have an account of a giant, and a few actually, many of them being in Peru, and I've shown this before. And here's someone zooming in with a type of P900 on these two figures, was startled when the figure stood up and appeared to be at least 12 to 15 feet tall. And this is probably where I'd be hanging out if I was a leftover giant, somewhere on the edge of the known realm. But within the last 20 years, I had heard of an account. Originally, I'd heard about it on the Art Bell show. You had a platoon in Afghanistan that was sent to a cave, and there were bones scattered around all over the cave, and told by many of the surviving soldiers, a large giant came out of the cave and moved with a speed and grace that they'd never seen, almost supernatural, and killed many of them. And eventually, the remaining platoon killed this giant. And I think from the evidence we see, the giants were not a bad race, but I think confronted with our modern barbaric tactics, the remaining giants may resort to violence. I think when we look at the old depictions of giants in the old world, we see a very peaceful people coexisting with man, and we even see that here in Peru. These two guys just hanging out, having a chat on a mountain, and this race must know that they are threatened today. We don't even speak of them in our narrative, let alone accept them in our population. And very interesting, when we look at this account in Afghanistan, this was a Caucasian, red-haired giant, similar to what we would imagine a Viking to be. And very sad that we wouldn't send some other team to possibly try to communicate or learn about this leftover race. But no, we sent in a military convoy to take him out. And I would love to hear your stories. What other accounts are there of giants in recent history? And as with many subjects, this is something I wanted to share at least a year ago. It was originally shared by Serotonin, and as we can see, this was an official Twitter post by the White House. So an absolutely official picture, and here's what we get. Everything seeming normal until we zoom in and look at this man right here. This man is about double the size of all these people, and we have the jet engine as a reference, as if the people weren't enough. And unbelievable, here just posting this as an official photograph. And what do we see in plain sight? Who is this man? Do any of you know? And here we have another example of what was coined the super soldier. And again, just a photo that surfaced in the tabloids, and someone with a keen eye was able to capture this anomaly. And here we can see this giant man. And as he approaches the other soldier, we get a feel for how massive he really is. Not quite as large as the Secret Service agent, but still a pretty big guy. And that's absolutely it. I hope you enjoyed, and do have a blessed day. Please like, comment, and subscribe.